In this video, we're going to cover how to avoid circular references build issues. We're also going to talk about the concept of forward declarations. When we create our code, it is likely that we use names that already exist in our code base. For instance, if we create a string class, it might get confused with the std string class or the boost string class. That's why we use the namespace concept. In this section, we're going to talk about the best practices on how to use namespaces. In this code example, we have the person class. What we want to do here is to create an environment where we have a circular reference. And by circular reference, I mean that the class person has a reference to the physician class. And, on the other hand, the physician class has a relationship with the person class because, of course, a physician is a person. So, this is a very specific case in C++. Because of the way of how the preprocessor works, we have to use the concept of forward declaration in order to let the compiler know how to act in this specific scenario. So let's start with the person class. Here we are in the header file of the person class. So here, let's start with line number 5. We are declaring the person class. And as we progress through the code, we see here that the person class has a private attribute of type pointer to physician. At this point, of course, this code needs to know what a physician is, but I'm not including the physician class. So how is it done? Well, here in line number 4, we have what it's called a forward declaration. And by forward declaration, we mean that we are just telling the compiler that there is a class called physician. So here on line 9, when I'm saying that I want to create a pointer to physician, at least at this point, the compiler knows that physician is a class. At this point, the compiler doesn't have any other information about the physician type. The only thing it knows is that it is a class. And something to take in mind is that if I remove this asterisk, which makes it a pointer, this code will not compile. This forward declaration concept will only work if I set it as a pointer, because otherwise the compiler will need to know how many bytes it will need to allocate in RAM memory in order to store this particular attribute. And of course, as we progress through this course, we are going to use smart pointers. But for now, let's just use regular pointer for this particular example. Okay, so let's go to the implementation file of our person class. Here, there is nothing new. I'm just declaring here a constructor that receives a parameter name and assigns it to our name attribute, and then a say hello method as we had in our previous example. So let's go to the physician header. Here, of course, I'm including the person.h, the person class header, just because a physician extends from the person class. And of course, the physician has a specialization, which is a private attribute. Here I have my constructor, my getter and setter for the specialization attribute. And here I have a simple method which is called heal that receives a person as a parameter. So if I go to the implementation file of the physician, you see that the only implementation that we can see here is implementation of the heal method. As I've mentioned, it receives a person parameter, which is a pointer to a person, and we are just going to print out I'm healing and the name of the person. So let's go to the main.cpp file. Let's see what we are doing here. So the first thing to notice is that the first line is including the physician header. And of course, I don't need to include the person header because the physician header already includes the person header. So since I've included the physician, it means that I have access to person. So inside the main function, I'm instantiating the physician class, creating the Jean object. And I'm passing the Jean string to the physician constructor. Then I'm creating the person Peter, just simply printing out the name of this person. And lastly, I am setting the physician John to the person Peter. And I'm just printing out the name of the physician of the person Peter. One thing to notice here is that here we've created Jean in the stack. Jean is not a pointer, and because the setPhysician method requires a pointer, that's why I'm using this ampersand, saying that I don't want to pass Jean itself, I want to pass the reference over the memory address of this particular object. After running it, we have the expected result. The first print has printed the name of the person, Peter, and then the second print printed out the name of Peter's physician. Now let's talk about namespaces. Now we have a very generic name, person and physician. Throughout our code, it is possible that other code has the same name, let's say the person name. In order to avoid class confusions, we are going to use what is called namespace. Here, I'm declaring the packed namespace. And by declaring this namespace, I'm saying that this person class belongs to the packed namespace. So whenever I refer to it, for instance here in the main.cpp, I'm saying that I want to declare a packed person. If I have a person in another namespace, I will have just need to use the other namespace, colon, person. And it's very simple to implement. Here you can see that I have namespace packed, and I have some squiggly braces here to declare the scope of this namespace. Here in the implementation, I'm saying that I'm using the namespace packed so that it knows that I'm using the packed person here and packed person here. Physician is also inside the packed namespace. And if I go to the implementation, again, I'm using namespace packed so that it knows that I'm referring here to packed physician. And as you just saw, here in the main.cpp, whenever I refer to a person or a physician, I'm specifically mentioning what is the namespace where physician and the person class are written. And if you did like this video, please subscribe to my channel, click on the bell so that you receive the notifications every time I upload a new video, and hit like and share it on your social networks. See you in the next video.